This hand went viral on Twitter. Everyone was talking about it a few months ago. They started talking about it again once Patrik Antonius, the GOAT, took down a big Triton event. So I had to call up one of my high-stakes coaches, Uri Peleg, and I had to say, Uri, can you please help us understand what's going on here? So Uri, we got maybe one of the sickest bluffs that we've seen in a long time. And can you help us break this hand down, please?
Yeah, this is a very, very, very sick hand. Let's get right into the action. We see hands limping for 4K at straddle. This is already kind of something you wouldn't expect him to do. So there's some dynamic here that we're not aware of, because usually from the cutoff, you just play raise or fold. So I don't know if these guys are having is it a stand-up game, or is there some side betting? But something is going on with Preflop, I would guess. Is that something you're aware of?
With hands, I mean, we've seen hands play a lot of these high-stakes games, and it seems like he is maybe playing poker every day. So I don't know if this is some, new meta. Because I've heard of some new people limping at high-stakes games as a new meta to sort of throw off the traditional pre-solved solutions. From what I've seen, Andy Nee and Antonius are pretty tough players, so maybe there's someone without the button, some button dynamic here, but I'm not sure either.
Yeah,
maybe.
So basically, hands limps, Andy Nee ISOs 5x from the big blind, and then Antonius cold calls. Are we going to do this with whole cards revealed? I assume everyone knows that.
Yeah, just say whole card reveal. Yeah, I mean, he ends up with 10-4 suited, which is one of the craziest hands.
So 10-4 suited, first of all, is just crazy pre-flop, which already kind of tells you Antonius is coming into this hand thinking he has some kind of big edge after the flop if he's flatting this hand, because you can't flat this with a live player left act against a 5x.
Right. I mean, he's probably just thinking that Andy Nee, we don't know much about Andy Nee, but he must probably thinking Andy Nee is making a lot of mistakes post-flop. He's about 100 and some, the blind's 1, 2, 5K. I mean, a pretty big straddle, but he's basically 150 BBs. He might just try to create some action. He's got the best position. He might think even hands fold sometimes, picks up some of that dead money. So, what do you think about that flat? I mean, is that a nice exploit flat pre-flop potentially if you think someone's making a lot of big mistakes?
Yeah, so generally I try to think how out of line is the flat. And I would say if hands is not in the hand, this should probably fold, but I could see an out of line flat. But with hands in the hand, and he's sometimes limping and raising. Sometimes he's limping and calling you with like a Jack 10 suited or a King 4 suited, something that beats 10-4. So with hands in the hand, this gets to the out of line spot where I just don't like it unless your reads are very, very crazy, because
unless you've been playing 20 years and you're from Finland and you're Patrik Antonius, you can play the 10-4.
Yeah. You have to be a complete sicko, because even three-handed, and let's say you have a read on Andy, what about the other guy? So you have to be in complete control to make this flat, or gambling a bit, which fair enough. Yeah, I think after the flop you get to see, and I'll tell you what I think Patrik probably picked up on.
All right, let's lock in. Let's go. Let's see the flop.
Yeah.
So let's flop queen 7-7. So basically, Anthony has two pair. Patrik, we don't see his whole cards here, but he's got 10-4 suited, so he's got a double backdoor. I think he actually doesn't have a backdoor. He's got a single backdoor flush draw, and Andy Nee looks like he bets block bets about 30% or something like that. So, what do you think, Uri? What's going on with the size, and what's going on with the call here?
Yeah, so Andy bets a bit under half pot, like more than 33%, and he's just playing his hand. And Patrik, let's assume Patrik glanced over at hands and he knows hands is folding, so it's a heads up pot, because otherwise it's tough to justify this even with no player left act. But we'll assume he knows hands is not interested in a hand, so it's just heads up. And then what's going through his mind, I would assume, and this is actually a play I've made a few times, albeit at much, much lower stakes than these. Like, you have to be a complete maniac to do this for $1 million. The idea here is to say, well, let's profile Andy Nee, and let's say, for him to raise it up to 20K against Hans's limp and Antonius' straddle, he's not going to have many sevens in his range. He's going to be kind of linear and high card heavy. And that's a very standard thing to assume. So on this kind of board, he could have aces, kings, queens, ace, queen, but very, very rarely, unless he has pocket queens, very rarely does he have a 7 beat. And given these guys are very deep, what Patrik is doing here, this is called the Mississippi Bluff. Is that a term you've heard of?
Mississippi Bluff, okay. The Mississippi Bluff, no.
Yeah, so the Mississippi Bluff, basically you do it when you're deep and you think that your opponent turned his hand face up as something that can't go all in. Okay. And you're like, okay, how do I bluff him off the hand given I think he has kings? And the answer is call, and then shove over his river bet. And that's the Mississippi Bluff. So it's planned from the flop. And the way you'd conceptualize this, and I know it sounds like a joke, but it's a real thing.
It's not. I mean, I know you're not. I agree with what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you're like, let's say Andy had pocket queens. Would he bet 27K? Probably not, right? Queens, you flop a boat, you have the board locked, you do something trickier. So let's say we know he doesn't have queens. If he had a 7, would he do this? Maybe. But it's so rare for him to have a 7 in the first place. And if you kind of go combinatorics and you go, well, 6 aces, 6 kings, some ace queens, and how many set combos of 7s does he have? So, yeah, I would guess this is kind of what's going on through Patrik's mind, where he turns the flush draw.
Yeah, I mean, once you turn the flush draw, you're basically saying, hey, I can either bluff the river if I miss. So I could put this in my call range, and then I can either bluff every river, or I can make a flush and win a big-ass pot. So what do you think about the turn bet 70K and then the call with the 410? What do you think about that?
Well, so first of all, I have a feeling Patrik might have called even without turning the flush draw, because the flop call is so completely out of line.
Right.
Right?
He could just call sometimes. I mean, the bet's so small at the flop, he could just be calling to potentially go 33 on the turn and then go maybe 75 or bet on the river. But, also the rare occasion he turns a 10, he might turn, there is sometimes that Andy just slows down. He's got ace king, he's got ace jack or something like that too. So, maybe you're right. Maybe he's a super sicko. He's planning to float.
I'll tell you why I think so. Yeah, the thing is, what you're saying is maybe he's floating to steal a pot, but there's a threshold in poker for how much potential your hand needs to have to float to steal a pot. And like we said, there's a player behind him, first of all, on the flop, so you never get to float to steal a pot. And second, you could have 8-9 or 10-8 or king-3, there are so many better hands that you could have. It's very clear to me on the flop, Patrik knows this is a way out of line call. I doubt he thinks the other guy is firing full range into two people to just check fold a turn and then float with a player left to act. That feels very, very extreme. So again, this is my feeling that Patrik basically, when he called the flop, he can see a stack going in. You kind of got this perfect run out, right, where you have the 4 on the river, so he has a 4 blocker. But really, what difference does a 4 blocker make? How does the other guy ever have a 4?
So true. I mean, I love Andy D's play here. He basically polarizes, goes pots, trying to charge the queen. Maybe Patrik has pocket 9s. Maybe he's got pocket 10s. I mean, maybe he's got pocket jacks. Maybe he's got ace 5 of clubs or something like that. So he bets the pot, and then Patrik animal styles it all in for $730,000. And now, Uri, if you're Andy, what are you thinking right now? What's going through your mind if you bet the pot and the guy goes all in for another $500K? My mind, he obviously has at least a 7. What are you thinking? What's going through your mind, and what's your threshold for calling?
I think kind of like I said, first of all, is to understand, sure, Patrik had the 4, but the 4 is not relevant here. If you want to shove a blocker, have a queen or have an 8 or have a 6 where you block a straight. The 4 is not really a thing. But yeah, if I were Andy, and this is actually something that you get to see when you look at solvers, I would never have been in this situation in the first place, because this is the thing with, like we said, Andy has more aces, kings, queen X, and Patrik has more 7X, and so Andy shouldn't be aiming for such a big pot size. He should be playing a lot more conservatively, and this is something you can actually see when you look in Sims, and this is a difference between equity advantage and nut advantage, where when you're very, very deep, despite having an equity advantage, you don't pile in money, because that's kind of it's Patrick's responsibility to pile in money when the board comes queen 7-7. So you can go block bet, block bet, block bet with kings, I would say, if you want to start betting kings, or you can start out by checking kings on the flop. But kind of by building the pot so big, he's kind of putting himself into a bind because he's narrowing Patrick's range so much. Patrick's never calling him with a queen on the river.
I mean, listen, I don't know. We've seen Patrik call with a lot of crazy hands, so he could call with a queen. You never know. I mean, I think it makes sense from Andy. Andy's probably just going exploit and saying, hey, you know, if the guy had a 7, he might raise the flop. He might raise the turn. I'm just going to say he's got a queen. If he raises me and goes all in, you know, unlikely, but I'm just going to fold. And, you know, I kind of see it what you're saying. Also, block bet river in this particular situation when he just doesn't have that many bluffs might be more GTO. And then Patrik, I mean, I guess Patrik calling range is going to be queens. It's going to be pairs 7 up to queen, maybe slow played flop once Andy raised the pre-flop to that big size. You know, maybe some backdoor 5s. I mean, 5-6. And,
pocket 5s, maybe.
True, yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, this river is, you know, these are the real interesting spots in Hold'em now where you get to this river and that sizing can really, really make a big difference. So Patrick's spot here, he raises. So you're saying this is Mississippi Bluff.
I have a feeling. But I'll say something like you were asking, what would I do in Andy's shoes? And you see Andy's folding his hand without really giving it any thought. That's actually very correct in terms of what his range is supposed to look like, because his range should be trips and then some small amount of kings. But if his range is aces, kings, ace, queen, mostly, he should be giving this thought, and the fact he isn't kind of speaks as to Patrick's image and his ability to pick his spots to bluff.
So, I mean, they may have edited it, or they just sped it up, and then they didn't make us wait this 7 minutes.
You think so?
But we might never know. But
I guess you see his clock going to one.
Took his time, you know. He's happy about it. I don't know, you know. Like, what are you thinking? If you go home and you see this hand, and some guy pulled this off, I would never fold kings in my life to this guy ever again.
Yeah, it's good advertising. It's good advertising. I mean, so the GTO way to think of it would be, let's say you think kings is the center of Andy's betting range. You just go, well, what are my pot odds, and I need to defend some amount of aces, kings, queen X. And then the question you'd ask yourself, is Patrik, do I have a read? Is he over bluffing, under bluffing, or whatever? And then it's tough to get a read on Patrik.
The guy's got to go crazy to be bluffing.
He has to be insane. I would have snap folded my entire range to Patrik. Like, I would never have called him. I would have folded if I had a 7. I would have folded everything.
Well, that's why Patrick's the GOAT. That's why the guy, if he's not in the Hall of Fame, he should be in the Hall of Fame. And but yeah, Uri, listen, we appreciate it calling you up. What's our big takeaway? Our big takeaway is what? What do you think?
I would say kind of for strategy, the big takeaway would be when it comes aboard where the other guy has the trips and you don't, just slow down early. Don't be overexposing yourself like this. And also, Patrick's the GOAT.
Patrick, I mean, listen, great takeaway. Overexpose yourself ever on a board where you don't got a range advantage, and Patrik Antonius the GOAT. So yeah, we appreciate it, Uri. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry.
He folds it.
Oh
and
my
it was
God.
the bluff.
10-4 of hearts? Are you serious?